think 10 PCSs. Oh, recording is on. I've been in the Pentagon twice, so I'm a little familiar with the area, and I kind of like it here too, so I'll be retiring soon, and I'll be staying in the area. I'll be able to see quite a few of you in the next coming years.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Kendall Briscoe. I'm the Financial Management Career Field Manager. Took over in 18. After 12 assignments, this is it for me. I've been in for 30 years. Met an airman, fell in love, married her. She's thus retired, and every morning I get up to go to work, even if I'm teleworking, she's still peacefully looking beautiful, sleep and everything. So I can't wait to join her in retirement one day. But while I'm here, is making Air Force better, making financial management better, and doing things good for you all. So always enjoy sharing perspectives. So let's get after it.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say I hope that she goes back and watches this to see the shout out that she got.
Sometimes.
Okay, cool beans. All right. So before we jump into things, do we have any questions from the crowd or any comments from the crowd before we ask the first question? Yay, nay? All right. So I think we have a small enough group. So I feel like the conversation is going to go really smooth and very open. My first question is going to be the biggest question. I think we spoke on it a little bit. So we have COVID. We had reports come out. We're all in the DMV area. So we've got troops in place. How are you doing? That is the first question. Like, how are you doing and how are you handling things internally and then with your people?
I'll attack it. So, I think we had just gotten into a new normal as far as COVID goes. We were talking about teleworking earlier and staying home, fighting from home, and providing all our capabilities to defend the nation and everything. And then the events that unfolded with Mr. George Floyd obviously prompted some other different actions and invoked a lot of different emotions. I can tell you, for me, I was pissed off instantly. I was angry and mad and everything. But just last Sunday, like I said, I just let that go. Right. From a human aspect, human rights aspect, that was wrong on so many different levels. So it has nothing to do with race or anything, even though it does have something to do with race. But on a human level, it was just flat out wrong. We are sworn to protect against things like that abroad. We don't tolerate things like that as a nation and as a country. So to see that play out on video before our very eyes, that was nerve-wracking. And then also to see the National Guard come out again, because I don't agree with the destruction of property or violence or anything like that, but I understand the frustration. Right. And then seeing our National Guard called into action and seeing our brothers and sisters in arms having to quell civil unrest, man, to see military boots on the ground is always just like, wow, it's right in your face. But understanding that in our nation's history that the National Guard, outside of humanitarian relief and disaster relief, that's why they've been called out for the most part. So to see that happen again is again disheartening. But for the most part, I've let my anger go. As a senior leader, I represent all airmen. So then you got to channel it to understand that, hey, I'm gonna be a wingman for the airman who's hurting right now, whatever race, color, creed, or whatever the case, and then lend my voice to that platform and then figure out a way for us to inspire and empower folks to do some action and change what they want to be, the change that they want to see. So over.
Well, thank you for Very good first question. I'm doing okay. It's been a tough, probably past 2 weeks, because the last time I think I was on, we had lost a employee. We lost a civilian to COVID. So to go through that memorial service last Friday and then turn it around, and the images and the news feeds coming at you, it was just so much the last couple of weeks to that I took a pause from social media and the news for a little while, because it's a lot. It was definitely a lot for me. So I can't imagine what everybody else is thinking, like, or people that lost family members or friends to COVID. Like, there are legit people out there that don't think the virus was real. But I sat on Facebook Live looking at a casket last Friday. So it is serious. And then just so much pain across the country. So it's been tough, but I agree with Chief Briscoe that we need to talk about all of this. The telework, how tough it is on some people to be alone, to be working from home, or the stress of, if you have a large family, everybody's been cramped inside the house for so long, maneuvering around each other, and then social issues that are happening around us. We need to just talk about it all. So from a mental health perspective, I definitely had to take a shutdown. I had to take a pause. Like, I'm being very, very open. After that memorial service, I told my mom, I was like, I'm going to have to hit the pause button for a minute, because that was pretty tough. And not many of us could actually go to the memorial service, but we were able to tune in, and we sent one, I think the previous director went down to represent the Air Force at this young man's funeral. But it's a lot. So I feel the weight of social injustice just like everybody else. And I've had people reach out to me that maybe they don't understand where the anger comes from. And I welcome those conversations, and I welcome them in this platform. If anybody is, not sure, or it just doesn't make sense. So I can see that someone's perspective who thinks, hey, this just really doesn't make sense. That's why these conversations are important, to dig deeper. Over.
So, and with that, Sergeant King kind of knew, I think that a lot of us are sharing the same sentiment. We have a small enough group that if anyone else wants to share how they're dealing with things, or just what it looks like for you, maybe your job. For myself, I shared with people that were on a bit earlier that it has been a really extraordinarily tough week, for me emotionally, and different things. And just like Chief Thomas was saying, and Chief Briscoe echoed, that we're all airmen, right? So it's personally, we have these things, externally, cumulatively, we have all these things going on. And so for myself on Sunday evening, I was like, well, what can I do? What can I touch? And so I messaged my boss, and I said, hey, I don't want to message the commander directly, but are we going to talk about this? Because we do have a diverse unit. We do have people, because we do squadron lunches, that are living in their apartment by themselves, right? And so a lot of the times, so on one hand, it's great that we were in COVID, because it drowned out some of the noise that has let some of these things go to the back seat, because everyone's so preoccupied. And it just has everything at the forefront. It has everyone's attention at a time where people can contemplate how to move forward and be effective. But watching people in those lunch meetings, people that were like chipper week 1, we're on week 7 and 8. They're sitting like in a dark room now with their video on, and so that was a concern for me. And I was really proud of my leadership, because we did have an all call. you know, it wasn't mandatory, and we just kind of had open discussion. And I think it's important because Chief Thomas, like you said, everyone doesn't understand everyone's perspective, and that's fair, and that's all right. And that's why we wear the uniform. But on Monday, I was surprised, and I had to fix my face because there's a young man in my unit who doesn't watch the news, who doesn't have Facebook. He's probably less than 25. He didn't know what we were talking about. So he respectfully asked my chief. He said, "I'm sorry, I tuned in later, but what's the question? What are we talking about?" Because normally it's like, "What sport would you play?" or, you know, something along those lines. And he said, "A murder?" Yeah, but it was very interesting to hear and watch him process, because he's an example of someone who isn't in the mainstream media. He's reading lots of books and living his life in his apartment. And I do believe that that was genuine. It wasn't a farce that he was sharing. So it's hard. And how we act, even though everyone may not speak in conversations like this, everyone's listening, right? And these conversations are uncomfortable. And I'll speak for myself that I think we've been avoiding these conversations because of who it may make uncomfortable. But we've addressed so many other things directly because we said that this was okay. It's like, check, we're good now, right? Like, we're all sitting here, diversity, like who we are and what we bring to the table. So we're good, right? Like, we're all on one team, we're in our uniform. And then as a community, we weren't always addressing with how these emotions were impacting ourselves and airmen. We were trying to, put them in the back seat. So I won't talk for much longer because I could talk all morning. But again, the floor is open because I think it's really important. Tomorrow, quick plug for tomorrow at 12, our special delivery, we're going to do a resiliency thing. 2 stories, not related to, current events, but I don't want to steal their thunder, but it will be really good. So pass on at least to your people, same room, both Sergeant King and I. So it should be a really good discussion, but the floor is open.
So I'll just throw in there just a few thoughts, So I was upset, embarrassed, and angered by what I saw. Not only with what the police officers did, but just kind of with all the riots and the damage that's been done. I understand the anger, but I also understand that not everybody that's angry, that's protesting, is doing damage. There's so many different people that take advantage of these opportunities to make everybody look bad, and it's frustrating because you don't know what you're watching half the time. So I did shut the TV off and try to get away from it. But in the 30 years that I've been in the Air Force, they say always relate to the service is 1% of the nation that serves, and I find it interesting that when we have a suicide problem in the civilian community and it affects the Air Force, we have a resiliency day or a down day or training or something like that for it. We have sexual assault and rape that goes on in the civilian community, and it's in the service, and we have green dot and training and stuff like that. But racism and prejudice and bias has been in the civilian community for hundreds of years. But I don't remember too much of that type of training or emphasis being put on it throughout my career. Maybe it's just me. I don't know, but I think times need to change, and I think they will moving forward. I remember when I first joined the Air Force, being from Southern California, I went to Texas and watching the news in '91 with the Rodney King riot. When I saw what they did to him on the side of the freeway, it was like, wow, it was really eye-opening to me. And back then, they beat a man. Here they killed somebody. And even back then, they talked about how things were going to change. We're going to change the laws. We're going to change training. We're going to change this. We're going to change that. I don't know, but I haven't seen too much change because it's just continued to go on in our country, and we need to talk about it. We need to talk about it, and like someone would have said, this is not easy conversation to discuss and bring up, because people, I think, are hesitant. People like me that are white may be hesitant to say something because they don't want to say something stupid. They don't want to say something that gets somebody upset or gets somebody mad. And I think we just need to be open to these discussions. Last week, actually, we had our little enlisted all call that we get together on Zoom with the FG staff, and I threw it out there and brought it up. And I tell you what, crickets. Boy, it was like nobody was hesitant to say anything. I had some of the chiefs pipe in, and we started discussing, and some of the other enlisted members within the FG staff, they talked about it, but it was almost like crickets. You know, I had to text people on the side. I was like, "Hey, you guys still on? What the hell is going on, people?" But it's just because it hasn't really been talked about, and people are not sure what to say. But I think, you know, with the messages that General Goldfein and Chief Wright put out, I think it's a step in the right direction.
I appreciate that, Chief. And there's something that I wanted to bring up. So we have been having these all, I don't want to say everybody's been having the all calls or whatever. We had a impromptu one yesterday with our squadron at like 7 o'clock in the evening. And it was crickets. But one thing that I did find out, right, and we found out this also, we found this out also when Chief Wright put out his message, right? So I don't know if everybody, I know we probably all read the message. And I told everybody in a large forum at the all call yesterday that I didn't know whether to feel proud or disappointed reading that message, right? And a lot of people were like, what does he mean? I was very, very proud that he put the message out and felt empowered by what he said. But as I continue to scroll down and read the comments underneath that, we saw a lot of, I have never been more disappointed in a Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, or talking about how much respect they lost for him because he identified as a Black man and not an airman, or what about all the other airmen? So one thing that I noticed, right, as we spoke about things yesterday at our all call, and then afterwards, I was even more upset with myself because subconsciously I had done the same thing. We say we have to be specific, right? We have to be specific in, how do I put this? So Chief just said, like, hey, I remember when this happened in the world, like we were dealing with suicides in society, we had suicide training and down days. And when we dealt with rapes, we had down days and training. But as we deal with this, right, and we're talking about specifically Black people in America feeling afraid or being killed, we're not specific. We talk about taking care of all people. And I think that's part of the issue. So as we go into these all calls and we say, does anybody have something to say? Right. So on one hand, you have people who aren't Black that probably don't want to sound offensive. But we've been jamming it down people's throats that, like, it's okay to be enraged, but we also say, like, all people should feel a way. Now, as I speak as a Black man, like, hey, I'm angry and I want you guys to know what I feel. I also am very mindful, like, I want to say how I feel, but I got to make sure I don't offend anybody with my anger. And that in turn skews the message, right? Because now you don't really know how I feel because I'm holding back because I've been told I cannot offend anybody else, even though that's offensive to me. So with that, my question would be, how do we attack, like, you know, as leaders, not saying on the larger scale, like I can't put out the training, but on a larger scale, like how do we keep saying to our, let's say to our Black airmen, like, hey, it's okay to feel enraged and talk to me. But we also keep pushing a message that we have to make everybody feel okay with this. Like we got to make everybody feel okay. So how do we change our leadership patterns? Like, and then as leaders, like, what are you guys doing? Like, I want everybody to feel okay because it's not just Black people that are upset about it, but right now we're talking about their issues. So how do we let them know, like, hey, we are specific and wanting to deal with you, but then creating an avenue where people who aren't Black feel comfortable coming and speaking about what they feel also, right? And giving them avenues to like help or join in the conversation. And it's going to be a balancing act. But as leaders, right? So how are you guys handling that without making everybody feel included, without making the specific or targeted audience feel like they can't express, if that makes sense? So whichever one of y'all want to grab that first, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so for me, man, it's simple, right? Society at large is a big issue that we need to attack, but we're American airmen, and we serve in the military. So within our community and everything, we have, you know, a brotherhood and a kinship from the profession of arms and everything. So whether it's whether we put a shield wall around our female airmen when they came up with the Me Too, where we want to curb suicide, if we need to go protect somebody, however our airmen feel, we need to meet them where they are. Whether we believe them or not, the perception is their reality, right? So if they are feeling angry, we should say, hey, what's the deal? Why are you feeling angry and everything? It's not political just because it's on TV. It's the topic of the day to say, hey, it's okay to feel angry. It's okay to channel it. Chief hit the nail on the head. Some folks want to engage, but just don't want to say the wrong thing and pour more gas on that fire. And I would just say, just take the courage to say, the hell with it. I'm not going to walk on eggshells. I've spent enough time with you to establish a relationship of trust and say, hey, what are you feeling? Let's just get it. Let's get it raw. Don't worry about it. We'll clean it up later, but let's just get after it, right? And I saw a lot of the comments out there. Oh, don't we have a zero tolerance to racism? We sure do. And I think any airman in the United States Air Force, any space operator will tell you that if I saw racism, if I saw an overt act, I would immediately kill that and make sure that we zero tolerate that. But what you can zero tolerate is something that's just unconscious, a bias or a systemic thing that's always happened. And if you're thinking, if you're in the military and just thinking about it as a whole, our black airmen are looking for, we understand. We understand that it's going to take some time. I mean, the Civil Rights Act was just signed in 1964. I'm born in 1971. I represent legally the first generation of my family that have a chance to get the American dream legally, right? And if you go back in time and understand that the emancipation, the Proclamation of Emancipation, that, hey, black folks took to arms to defend this country to be free. And that the 14th Amendment, the 13th Amendment is because of the actions that they took. The 14th Amendment allows us to have the same equal rights as everybody. But again, over time, we never healed from 200 years of slavery, 200 more separate but equal, and then we get to the Civil Rights Act in 1964. So we've never had the conversation. We've never talked about things. Even when you talk about illegal aliens or this, that, and the other, hey, if we reconcile the 14th Amendment where we naturalize slaves, and if you're born here, you're an American citizen, all of these things happen, but we're here now. First generation right outside of the Civil Rights Act, and we're serving in the military. And I'm proud to serve in the military. Think about the lineage and the heritage that I'm connected to, whether it's Buffalo Soldiers, Tuskegee Airmen, and the 54th Regiment, the 24th. There's so many instances of valor and gallantry that black airmen and black soldiers and black servicemen and women have helped shape and build this country. So if they feel the need to be mad about something, I'm gonna sit there and ask them, hey, why are you mad? And then try to understand their point of view and understand what are we teaching, what do we have in our culture, how do we then correct that culture, whether it's through another, I don't want to see another daggone CBT, but I want to have a conversation. So what is it on your mind? How can we get after it? And then let's move forward as far as educate. What do you tell your kids at home about race? What do you tell your airmen at the job about race? And then if we start with each and every one of those one at a time, eventually we'll make some change that we want to see. So, over. Sorry about the diatribe.
Hold on. Chief Thomas, before I go to you, I want to hit on something that he said and something that was said last week, and then I want you to answer that question. So you talked about a lot of like the amendment and the 13th Amendment and the 14th Amendment, and something was said last week by a great chief that we know, and she said, changing policy means nothing if you don't change the culture. Right. So when we talk about things, we always talk about like we put these things in place and like this gave us the right to do certain things. So Chief Thomas, for you, I would ask then, like, how do we change the culture?
I think part of while
think
Chief
having
Thomas is talking about that, I think part of changing the culture is for everyone. I know this conversation right now is largely about race, but it's for everyone to be who they are. We have so many airmen covering up who they are, covering up the fact that they are, you know, a single parent, covering up the fact that they are have a different belief, covering up the fact that they are in a same-sex marriage, covering up the fact that they have a, you know, a different dialect, right? Just had an airman post something on Facebook saying, hey, she has a Southern twang to her dialect, and she's trying to get rid of it. I think part of that changing the culture is showing up to work. I'm not saying just be ham, you know what I'm saying? You still in the military, follow the rules and the regulations, but showing up to work and being who you are. If you say y'all, keep saying y'all. That way, the culture, you go into that situation and people know this is her dialect. And then when you start bringing that, bringing what we pay you to do to the table, they'll know, oh, people who say y'all or people who talk like that, they'll start connecting the two, right? But as long as we keep imitating and adapting to the culture and fixing ourselves to keep that culture alive, it's gonna keep flourishing. Show up to work and put your picture on your desk of who your spouse is. You know, say what you celebrate. We can't even say Christmas sometimes in the workplace. Whatever you celebrate, whoever you believe in, let that be, right? But as long as we are afraid to be who we are, and unless you're doing something that you know is just wrong because you believe in something that's hateful and ugly and is going to deprive someone of their life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, you know, that kind of stuff there stays in the darkness. But I've seen many airmen who are, you know, transgender. We tiptoe around that conversation. Somebody can, well, how do I treat somebody that's transgender? Well, first of all, how do you even know? You treat them like they're a person, you know? That's what you do. Well, I don't know how to talk to, you know, a female if I have to tell her she has a body odor. There are so many different topics that we just cannot talk about. And the reason we can't talk about it now is because we haven't been talking about it. So show up to work and be who you are. And you have to address those things. Another thing that I'm hearing now is, well, I don't want to say something because I don't want to ruffle people's feathers. We are fighting wars right now because the extremists have different views than we do. Why are we over in China? Why are we over in foreign lands? Why is that? Because they have different views. We can talk about that, Matter of fact, we wrote a whole document about it, about how we're going to get after that. But we can't talk about our own dirty drawers that's in our laundry basket. We can't talk about that. That's what we need to talk about. And people need to call it out. You walk in somebody's house and the house stinks and everybody just sitting there like, well, do you smell it? And if nobody calls out the stink, it's going to stay there. Because you just get used to it. You get used to it. And all of a sudden, it don't stink as bad. But some of us know that the stink never went away. It stinks, and it still stinks. For the people who don't see the race stink, you can't jam it down people's throats, right? Because they just don't see it. It doesn't make them wrong. They just don't see it. So we have to be able to know that just because we think and see certain things, not everybody sees it that way. And once again, not every grape on the vine is going to be ripe. You know, you're gonna have some rotten grapes. And I appreciate the ones who show me who they are. Appreciate those people, right? Because they got it honestly. They were taught that. That's taught. So one of the things that I think we can do is to show up to work who we are. You know, don't change and try to hide your voice, how you talk, how you dress, you know, how you go about doing things. Because when you conform to the current culture, it keeps it alive.
Chief Thomas, I think we couldn't hear you at first. I don't know if it was something going on, but over to you, please.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
We're good.
Okay. So I agree. Everything, I almost yelled out amen for Chief Wesley. But, you know, like the conversations have to happen openly. Like, and when someone, for example, like what Chief Wesley said, someone that has been taught bias, they grew up in a household, they grew up in a town where everybody looked the same for generations and generations and generations after that. So think about that person that is now your unit, and they say that thing or they ask that question that is like from the list of stereotypes that gets published out on these blogs, and it gets all the way under your skin. I am asking and begging everybody to correct them lovingly, answer their questions lovingly, because I've been asked questions or people have said things to me that instantly made the surface of my skin hot. Like, where did you get that from? But they literally were taught this belief. And when people come to you for understanding, try to be able to differentiate between somebody who's honestly trying to learn versus somebody that's being sarcastic. You know, when you hear those "you people," when people start a question off, well, if y'all didn't like this, or if you people didn't call yourselves this, you know, that's different than someone who genuinely doesn't know. And they were raised being taught these things. So that's a personal change that I made, is when I hear things, because I had to correct someone lovingly this year. And I know it's coming from bias. I know it's coming from a place of just systemic bias. I know, and it had to do with a person's accent and how a person spoke. So it's ironic Chief Wesley brought that up. And I heard the person was articulate. So I had to just pull the person to the side, and I just closed the door and I said, hey, you know, I'm going to tell you what that sounds like to me. And then can you just help me understand why you use that adjective to describe how this person speaks? And the way I broke it down, I said, hey, this person is a GS civilian with no affiliation with the military. For them to have been hired at that GS pay grade, at a minimum, they have a bachelor's degree. So why wouldn't that person speak a certain way? Like, why do you ask that question for every GS employee? Do you critique how they speak? And what does that have to do with that person's knowledge? I don't know if it worked. I know that when I brought this to the person's attention, they had a very emotional breakdown, and the person shared with me that they weren't aware of that bias, but I told that absolutely came from bias. That was absolutely like a subconscious bias you have about a person that looks a certain way, speaks only like this, or a person that is from this region of the country is either educated or uneducated. If you went to this particular college, then I know what you say is valid. Or if you got your degree online, then what you say may not be valid. Those are all biases. But what I think and the way I try to handle situations like this, these types of conversations, is when the person says the thing that gets under your skin that it is offensive to you, don't bite their head off. Don't bite their head off. Try to, just take them by the hand and guide them to the right. Hey, you let me tell you how that made me feel when you said that. This is what this means where I'm from. When you call somebody, I remember being deployed. I was in Afghanistan and I worked in NATO. So my supervisor was German. And I remember he said, someone came in, two white guys came in, they dapped and they said, "Good morning, brother." And he looked at me and he turned red and I went, "Well, what's wrong with you?" And he said, "I thought only Black people could say brother." So I just said, hey, sir, come on, let me educate you a little bit. It's a term of endearment. Just like dear is not isolated to one particular race. I was like, I don't know what kind of movies you watching in Germany, but there's nothing wrong with that word. It's like those types of situations. So that's why I'm asking everybody, when we sit down and start having these candid conversations, you're going to hear some crazy stuff that you think should have been left back in the 40s, but people genuinely believe this stuff. They really, and don't break out and get, attack them verbally. Listen and try to help people. Some people, you're right, they're not going to change. This is just who they are, but that doesn't mean shut up about it. Keep having the conversations and keep listening. You'll be surprised at what you hear and what people, they really believe some of this stuff. They really believe a lot of the stereotypes that grew up, and people of other races that I don't want anybody to feel left out in this conversation, because everybody's been mistreated at some form based on the way they look or their background. And when that person comes out, like you're sitting in a room and somebody from another ethnicity, hey, they want to get something off their chest, let them get it off their chest. Don't say no. And I know we're having a pointed discussion in some forums about issues affecting African Americans, Black Americans. But if someone from another ethnicity has been just raked across the coals, let them talk about it. That's how we're supposed to be understanding each other right now. Because I 2 months ago, there was another demographic that was getting it given to them for no reason. And that conversation needs to happen too. When COVID kicked off, a lot of people, were targeted. But if we want to have targeted discussions, I applaud that. If you want to have a discussion specifically with Black Americans, because that's who the majority of the people who are upset right now and feel victimized, have the discussions in forums that you see fit, but be ready to hear from everybody, because everybody is dealing with a little bit of pain right now too. Over.
King, you had mentioned something, and I wanted to address it. The comments that was at the bottom of that post that Chief Master Sergeant Air Force had posted. I would just say I would use that when I start discussions like this, because you have to understand conversation has changed. Someone can feel empowered behind a keyboard or behind social media, but wouldn't say that in an open forum. So if it's out there in the population, I would have to assume it's in my population, and I would just go in and just grab some of those things that, I thought we have a zero tolerance. Oh, I thought we, this, that, and the other. Take any opposing view and then bring it out into the light, and let's just talk about it, right? And just go from there. And that's how you kind of start that conversation and show that it's okay to just say whatever's on your mind. So I think as we're having these conversations and we're doing it, we got to pull it almost out sometimes and just get after it and talk about it. So hope.
If some of you all, it's a lot going on in the news, but the mayor in Petal, Mississippi, he said something, he made an insensitive comment. Mayor Hal Marks, he made an insensitive comment. And he came back and he apologized for it. And it was about Mr. Floyd's death, right? And him being able to talk and saying he couldn't breathe, right? Insensitive comment. But in one of the news articles, he said that he was saddened and upset by his aldermen, the board of aldermen, who held his same view and may have said that same comment, but they didn't say anything. And that really stuck out for me in this particular article, because when we don't stop someone from saying something, then it continues on. I'm not saying that you bringing it to their attention is going to stop it, but at least that seed has been planted. I have people now, using the word colored. And I tell them, hey, you may want to be careful, because some people view that word as in the same vein as the word nigger. And they wanted to, fight me on this. You know what? Do what you want to do. Do what you want to do. That's not what that is. Okay, all right. I know for a fact, even though that person showed me that, tried to make this out to be a battle, I guarantee you they're going to think twice about saying that word again. I guarantee you. I bet you they won't say it with ease, or they're going to question themselves now, or they're going to ask the question now. So we have to tell people when they're doing something offensive, even if it's regarding same-sex marriage, LGBTQ members, something regarding, it could be something related to a bias we have towards a particular AFSC. We say things about it and we say, oh, it's just a joke. It's just a joke. Well, it's a joke to you, but it could be offending someone else. So I encourage each one of you, regardless of your position, regardless of your rank, part of having the discussion is cutting things off at the knees when you see it happening. Is it uncomfortable? Yeah, could be. And then it's been commented on a few times here. Well, we try to keep the peace and you don't want to offend anybody. Well, sometimes I'm not condoning buffoonery, right? I'm not telling you to just go in there and be Tasmanian devil in your workshop. But have you ever seen someone get to that point where it just all comes exploding out and they say what they say and they dash that conversation with a few motherfuckers and this got shit and brrr. I'm not telling you to do that. Not telling you to do that. But sometimes you keep that stuff pressed down so much that it comes exploding out. And I'd rather for you to get it out and say it. And like someone said, you can clean it up later. But you gotta get it out. And just like Chief Thomas said, some people are going to say stupid things as we're having these conversations. They're going to say things that may get you riled up, that may make you scratch your head. But they won't know that there's an issue with how they're thinking or how they could reword something or think about something if it's not brought to your attention. So we have to be careful what we ask for. We want to have these conversations. We know it's not going to be smooth and easy. So when someone does say something, you can't beat them up for it. You have to teach them. And just because you sat there and taught them something or gave them another view of something, it doesn't mean that they're going to accept it. And you have to be okay with that. Okay? Over.
Thank you so much, Chief Wesley. Chief Robinson, I see you have your hand up. And before you take the floor, I just want to share that one of the things I think that I'm hearing from everyone this morning is that we're learning how we have to say we say in regards to mental health that it's okay not to be okay, but we need to be able to say in regards to this subject, racism in our forces, like the separation and gaining the intelligence to have those conversations, because it's easy if someone tells you something that you don't like to be mad, but we have to not carry those conversations outside of that. We need to be able to agree to disagree, but it is okay to not be okay. And Sergeant King, I think what I heard you sharing was just that it is difficult when we talk with others in our unit, and I appreciate the consideration that people are trying to make, right? Be it professionally motivated, or whatever your motivation is, to be considerate of others. But I think that the opposite side of that coin is so many people have not been taken into consideration, and they're okay with not taking care of people the way they said. So when someone like Chief Wesley, the story she shared, if someone takes the time to give you feedback, to say, hey, that thing you said or the word you used, this is how it could be interpreted, instead of being defensive. For most people with good intentions, it's hard to give criticism, constructive criticism. It takes a lot for most people. So I won't go on, but again, just to kind of remember that it is okay to not be okay, right? Like, I don't have to tell everyone that every day is a great day and I'm good, because it's not. And we need to be honest about it, and we need to be able to listen to each other and educate each other, because we all come from different places. But Chief Robinson, it's over to you.
All right. Good morning, everybody. So one of the things that I was listening to and is talking about how do we have those conversations. I actually I respect my brothers and sisters that are white that come to me and ask me those questions. Usually in DM, not in public, and they ask me those questions. How do you feel? How can I get after it? And they asking me, they don't want to come off this way and this way. And I kind of respect that. And I respect it because you can kind of see their heart. And I tell them all the time that, some black people ain't got all the answers either. Just because you black don't mean you have the answers to racism or how to end it or how to control it. But those conversations that need to be had are vital, because I think the one key that I try to give them is that most people, and it seems that way with riots and when you have disagreements, is that it's white against black. And I think that's not the key. I don't think it's about individuals. Now, I know for a fact we still got some racists out there and amongst us, but I don't think that's the key. I think the key is that we're not fighting against individuals. We're fighting against a systemic culture that allows one race of people to move smoother than anybody else. And I think that's what we're fighting about. And I think when you get them to understand the reason behind the anger and the hurt and the rage, I think it's easier for them to join you in that plight. Because I think right now it's I have a lot of, like I said, I have a lot of white friends that say, hey man, I'm cool, I'm cool, I love you. That's not, I was like, I know that already. That's not why you having to prove that right now. That's not the issue. So I think that if we explain to them how we feel and listen to how they feel, and I think it's listening on both sides. I don't think that we all have the answers, but you can tell them what it's not, I guess. So that's just my 2 cents.
If I could jump in real fast on some of the different comments that were made about communicating, talking, and listening, I think one of the things we need to really focus on is we need to listen, not to respond with our own opinion, but listen to learn. I think that's the bottom line is we need to listen to learn, to understand everybody, where they come from, their backgrounds and everything, because oftentimes we always listen and right away we're formulating something in our head and we're like, well, this is why I think my opinion is X, Y, and Z. And you go back and forth and you say, well, I respectfully disagree. Okay, that's fine. It is what it is. But how about we don't get to that point? We just listen to hear somebody and learn. And as leaders, I think that's one of the things we can all do better on and model that behavior, because you can get fired up into some stuff real quick, but listening to learn versus listening to respond or listening to try to get your point across, I think will be helpful as well.
Chief, thanks for that. I was thinking having that conversation, requires empathy. You have to have an understanding of what the airman goes through, how on the job and in the uniform, folks can thank you for your service, but once you step out that uniform and them blue lights go on behind you and you're in civilian clothes and you're hoping that you have your military ID on you as well. Some things race through your mind, right? And then once you have your kids and your sons and daughters driving and they don't have that military ID, how do you tell them and do everything like that? I mean, we have folks of color who's swearing to defend the Constitution that actually have provisions on slavery in there too. So had to be amended and everything, like I said, but eventually we are where we are. But it's those little things that just add up. And I want to take one point and say we saw recently about the UCMJ disparities, right, and the application of that. Some of that is just, again, that unconscious bias and the culture that just comes from America, and that's what's within our ranks. If you constantly have to, as an airman, have to defend yourself, or if you're stopped at a traffic stop and you ask the question, why you stopped me, and the very question itself says you're being disrespectful, even though that's just a question anybody would want to know, is why are you stopping me, right? But by the time you get in trouble, and then by the time you stand in front of a commander and someone's saying, hey, what did you do? And you've been explaining yourself your entire life, and you just say, you know what? Not today. I'm not explaining myself today. And then you come off disrespectful, and then it's applied how it's applied. And then you continue to provide poor gas on that fire. But it's that empathy of understanding all the different slights, cuts, death by many cuts that culminate in what you see today in your unit and what they're feeling. So, over.
Thank you very much for that. C. Snart Mickens would like to speak, so the floor is yours, Mel.
Hi, good morning. Thank you. I love these conversations. I'm sorry if the screen looks weird, but I love these conversations because there's so much going on out in social media and all these different groups and Air Force Quarantine. But this is us right here, Joint Base Andrews. And I love that y'all are creating these conversations, even if they're small right now, because I think it's just going to keep growing. But I'm taking in perspective, right? Like we all came up a certain way. Trying to take in all the different perspectives, white, Black, Asian, LGBT, all of this right now, because I feel like this is creating a voice for a lot of people, and it's great. One thing I did want to, perspective that I did want to ask the group about, so we watched our parents, most of us watched our parents go through civil rights, and our grandparents, and they went through, segregation and all that, right? We were the kids back then. So now this is our generation, and this is what's coming about during our generation. We have more voice than they did. But I'm looking at the perspective, I have a 15-year-old in my house. So I'm curious, I talked to her, and now granted, she's half Black and half Hispanic, and she has some real strong views on what she's seeing. And I try my best to kind of listen, but her viewpoints are so to another level than mine that I'm like, wow, I really have to listen to her, because she's closer to the young airmen right now, right? Like she's closer to that generation. And so we're all getting ready to move on. We're going to be moving on from the Air Force. My question is for you all that have maybe teenage kids or 20-something-year-olds, or just like that young airman group. What do we see them doing with this message? What are we giving them so that they can carry forth in the Air Force?
So I can talk a little bit about that. I have a 22-year-old, a 20-year-old, and a 16-year-old, and a 5-year-old daughter, who I am trying to protect to grow up without the situation. Don't know if that's going to be possible, but I think today, just like back in the 60s, is a start. And I think that what I think they are looking for is for us to be that example. I think most of the young airmen that I know that are in my corner or sphere of influence, I think that I get, private messages saying thanks. And I think they're just waiting for an example. There was a video a long time ago, and it had nothing to do with this situation, but it was a dude acting all crazy, talking about the power and influence. It was a dude acting, he was on the beach or something, on the field, I can't remember, and he was doing this weird dance. And then everybody was making fun of him, everybody was laughing, and then one person joined him, and then another person joined him, and another person joined him, until the whole field was doing this awkward dance. And it was an experiment to show just how power and influence is. So I think for me, what we can do is lead by example. And I think Chief Wright and General Goldfing did that when they made that video, to show not so much to have the discussion, because those discussions I'm sure are had, and not just in front of a video. I think they had that. I think they made that video to show how to have a discussion, and I think that that's what they're waiting for as an example.
So for me, I'm a little deliberate. My son is 16. My daughters are 28. I have twin daughters that's 28. One of my daughters is came out to us that she's gay as well. So not only being a black woman, but being a gay black woman. So you have those conversations as well. So what I would tell you is that as a parent, we own outright the development of our kids, right? And the education of our kids. If our school system is not teaching them what I think the lesson they should learn is, I give them additional topics to go research. You're about as smart as you are to put what you put in a search engine to get the information you need. But information is so readily available, even in Black History Month or whatever the case it is, where, whatever they got, a book report or whatever the case, I'm giving them topics to go research. I'm giving them topics to go research to figure out, hey, make the decision for yourself. Don't wait behind a keyboard to find out when social media tell you what you should and shouldn't like. Don't let anybody else tell you what you should do or think, or what religion you should have, or what person you should vote for. Find out what you stand for, who you are in this day and age. And quite frankly, we're not 100%. None of us is 100% in one race anyway. But find out who you are and what you stand for, and then vote accordingly, act accordingly, tolerate what you want accordingly, and then respond that way as a person. And one thing I like about all of my kids is that they've done that. They are who they are, and they don't apologize for who they are. And when pressures of kids nowadays, like my son, he'll tell me that he's around conversations in high school about and this is guy talk. One guy in the group said, "Hey, I would sleep with a transgender," and then let's have a conversation about that. What do you think about that? Well, he's gay, and I respect him for being gay, but that's not me, and that's not but he has his own opinion about it because he's read into it. So I would just say, find out what you want them to know, instill those values in them, and figure out how, if we all collectively do that. If I take care of my kids, you take care of your kids. I take care of my airmen, you take care of your airmen. Man, we then develop the culture that we want to see as Americans, as airmen, and as parents. So that's my 2 cents.
Sergeant Hawkins, I see you have your hand up.
So you can
Go ahead, Chief.
I was just gonna say, if you have teenagers, young adults, even young airmen in your organizations, like empowering them to talk, stop with the keyboard, just look each other in the face and just share your beliefs and your thoughts. That is kind of like a dying art of just having conversations. Even if it's virtual like this, but just not typing your response, looking at somebody's face, even on camera, and just having dialogue.
Sarah Hawkins.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm not from your guys' area. I'm from California out of Beale Air Force Base, so I appreciate you guys are getting the invite from Sergeant King to come out and come and join you guys today. It's really interesting to hear your guys' perspective of what's going on out there in that area compared to like what's going on out here in Cali, but some of the things are all still the same, right? Like you asked the question about what you do with teenagers. I have a 17-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old son. I'm mixed, half black, half Hispanic, and my kid's mom's white. And my daughter came out looking more ethnic than my son did, right? So growing up, I had the same conversations with my daughter that my mom had with me about like driving. Like you're getting ready to get close to driving. So if you get pulled over, these are the things that you need to do. Make sure you keep your hands visible. Don't make any sudden movements, those kinds of things. And it didn't occur to me until recently that those are not conversations that I ever had with my son, because like through a cognitive bias, it's just not something that I feel like he's ever going to have to worry about, because he has straight hair, super light skin, and she has very curly bronze skin. She looks different. So with having two kids and trying to balance like being like mixed race kids, like they struggle with where they fall, which I think is another unique thing that happens with us within our community. You know what I mean? And trying to explain to them like the gravity of the situation that's happening right now and how it may impact them or may not. But like Chief said too, sorry about that. It is about like how we provide them with information and how we shape and mold them to have the future that we want them to have, and the hopes and dreams that we want them to have. And we don't want to hold them back, but I don't know. Am I the only one that had that conversation with their parents about what you're supposed to do if you get pulled over by the police?
No, I think we all had that conversation. I think that we've had that conversation with parents, because the times are different. I think it depends on where you grew up and how you grew up, if you have that conversation. So no, I haven't had a conversation, and I tell you that having a conversation with my son, my 20-year-old son, who is my wild child almost, he likes to joke, but his jokes weren't funny to me, because I asked him, what do you do if you get stopped by the cops? And he told me to pull out my camera phone and start evoking amendments and all that. And I was like, well, bro, I don't think you're gonna come home that same day. So trying to explain to them that, you know, the right way to do to be respectful and not to just join what you see on social media, I think was what was vital in the development and teaching them what to do and what not to do.
I'll say for me, I think that, right, we talk about what's the right thing to do. And we had the discussion yesterday, so I'll just share this story with you guys. Less than a year ago, so October, I got pulled over by the cops and I had a gun pulled on me. And I did the right things, right? So I think the message sometimes isn't doing the right things, but understanding that even through that, that might be your last, all right? Like I did the right things. I put my hands and my keys and my arms out the window. I let them know, like, you know, like, hey, I'm trying to follow the rules. When they told me to get my driver's license, I asked for permission. And at first I even asked them, did they want to grab it for me? Right? Because I don't want to be in a position where I'm reaching over, but understanding not only that I need to tell my kids this, but big point to what Chief Robinson just said. Like, yeah, a lot of folks in this age now are like, I get pulled over, first thing I got to do is I got to pull my phone out and I got to click the camera on and I got to do all of this and that, not understanding that you doing that sometimes, you trying to reach for your phone might be viewed as you reaching for a weapon. You might not come home. Arguing back and saying like it's my right, you know, and yelling back, yeah, like you feel that, but that might prevent you from coming home that day. And I ain't talking about coming home because you're going to jail. I'm talking about coming home. So we talk about like having these conversations within our home. A big thing that was said by one of the members yesterday when we had our all call was like, yeah, I'm upset and I'm having these conversations at home. So the biggest thing that I would say is, you know, and kind of going back to Sergeant Mickens' question is the conversations that you have at home is the conversation that you need to have with your airmen. Right? Like if you're telling your kids, like, oh, make sure if you get pulled over, then you should do X, Y, and Z, and here's the expectation, and this, that. When you go to work and you have that, you know, we have that mandatory week safety brief, whatever the case may be, that's what you just had with, you know, your teenage kids. It's the same conversation that you need to have with your young airmen, because again, they're going to do what they see on social media, and yes, it's kept a lot of people protected because cops know they're being filmed. But at the same time, there's a lot of folks that think like, hey, me yelling at the cops is the right thing. It's probably not. Me reaching for my phone when they tell me to show my hands, probably not the right thing. Me throwing my phone up when it's dark and that bright light is on you, so all they see is just objects moving, might not be the right thing. So that's the conversations that I have, and as Chief Briscoe also said, like he tells his kids to like go and do the research. Right. So research for me is I talk to my son not just about this, but literally like, hey, what are you interested in? Right. So if my son went through a phase of watching anime, I got into anime. Why? Because when I'm talking to my airmen and they're all talking about anime, now I can have the conversation with them, and I'm meeting them where they're at. There's a lot of music we don't like listening to, right? So this helped me understand like some of the things why our airmen feel depressed. My son was listening to certain music, and I'm like, man, that's garbage hip hop. Why are you listening to that? But actually listen to the music and listen to the lyrics, and it's all about being depressed, popping pills, killing yourself. Like that was a wave for them. So then I understood why my airmen were feeling so down, because they're listening to that same thing and thinking this is the cool thing now. So as we tell our kids to go do your research and fact find, I tell you to, if you have teenagers or somebody close to our airman range, talk to them about what they're doing, what they're listening to, and not just in the sense of like, you shouldn't listen to that, but you go and listen to it and find out what they're watching and actually spend time watching it. Find out what they're listening to and actually spend time listening to it with a non-objective view, and then go to your airmen and talk to them about that. And I promise you the return on investment and the conversations that you have with them about their interest, and then being able to talk to them about some of the things they may be hearing, seeing, doing, how like, yeah, it's cool, but here's an alternate, or don't feed too much into it. They listen to you because they know you're invested into what they are doing. So that's how you can make change and meet the airmen where they're at. I'm out. Oh, and thanks for coming, Sergeant Hawkins. CAA.
Actually, thank you guys for letting me join. I got to dip and go do FTAC online right now. They're going in class in like 10 minutes. So it was a great conversation. Great listening to you guys over there in the, what is it, the DMV area. Thanks for having me, man. I have the same thing on Friday. I'm gonna shoot you an invite.
Appreciate it. So I know we're past the 10 o'clock hour. We're way past the 10 o'clock hour. So I know around this time is the time we around the time where we start to wrap up. So before we do we have any other additional questions or comments? Yes, no, maybe so. Okay. So we're going to do something a little different today. So I know we have some of our chiefs returning, and we always kind of put you guys on the spot and say, like, what are you reading? So today, me and Sergeant Witter are going to share what we're reading and suggest a book. And then we will have Chief BRISCOE and Chief Thomas give their closing thoughts. So with that, Sergeant Witter, or do you want me to go first? No, you good.
All right, thank you. So thank you everyone for making the time to join, and everyone that chimed in, and even if you didn't speak, just listening, because like I said, to me, we're all looking for ways to make a difference and how we can be impactful. And I think this is how we do it. We bring it to the forefront, we make time for it, and we say it's important to us. So really quickly, before I give my book suggestion, just kind of like for your situational awareness, I don't know how far it's gotten down the chain of communication, but at Fort Meade this week, Chief BRISCOE, you actually reminded me about it because you mentioned having your CAT card, and how I've heard the sentiment that Black members may feel more comfortable in their uniform. At a gas station outside of Fort Meade, a young airman was in his uniform, and he was verbally assaulted by a civilian female who continued to engage with him and was saying things like, you think you're better than us, what, kind of really trying to incite stuff from him. The belief is that she thought that maybe he was National Guard, because there's a bad impression of what the Guards' participation is in the riots. But it didn't end there. She followed him around his neighborhood. So he had to circle around his, not go home. He had to, we talk about OPSEC and different things. So he was smart. He didn't get out of his car and go into his home. So she doesn't know where he lived, but eventually she left. So just be mindful and share that story with others. I think it's important whenever we hear things like that to kind of make it public, because we think that maybe it won't happen, or we are protected in uniform, but we're not, right? So, but I finished this book in the last, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Before I would be remiss, because I know that's how we kind of close with books and closing comments. We did have somebody that had their hand up, and I did not see him. So I apologize, and I want to get to you before we start with closing. So the floor is yours.
Hi, good morning. Thank you. I'm Johanna Martinez-Biglis. I'm actually a community readiness consultant with the Pentagon Airmen and Family Readiness Center. So I wanted to thank you all for doing this. So, hey, sir. But I wanted to just kind of go back to the point of I'm a coach, and a lot of coaching that I do, I work with a lot of individuals who are getting ready to make transitions in their life. So whether it's their career or family members or whomever. But more importantly, I really appreciated the points that you all brought up about conversations, because a lot of times the conversations that are missing are the ones that need to happen in order to affect change and to make any change happen. And I also am a parent, and I have a 14-year-old, or almost, he's 13. He'll be 14 in October, and my daughter is 9. And I've noticed that anytime I sit down with them and actually ask them questions, so what's the latest TikTok? What's this, what's that? It's just taking that time to actually listen and understand, and they sometimes come up with some ideas that impress me. And I'm like, wow, I think the day that I stop learning is the day that I'm dead, basically. But that's what I try to instill in them as well, is that as long as I'm alive and breathing, I'm always open to learning. But I think, as you all of you brought up, the most powerful thing to do is to have that conversation, because language can be used in so many ways. And more importantly, what I learned in going through my own coaching journey and becoming a coach is that language is really utilized to generate and create. So if we can generate something out of that conversation that will then create a change, then I think all of us, no matter how small that change is, are really contributing to the overall impact of what it is that we want to achieve ultimately, and having individuals feel that their concerns are heard and listened to as well. Because there's also that distinction that I make between someone saying to me, I heard what you said, versus, oh, I listened to what you had to say. So I really appreciate, again, the time that you all took today, and thank you for this is great. Unfortunately, my team staff meeting occurs the same time at 9, but I was like, no, I really want to take part because I heard a lot of great things about this time and the coffee with all of you. So thank you all for sharing your personal stories, and I hope to keep joining you all going forward. So thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. I didn't recognize you outside of our squadron event. I'll just pick up really quickly what I finished within the last year that was really impactful, although it's mostly about business. And it was an audiobook because I used to have that nice commute where I could listen to stories, but now I'm stuck at home, so not as many stories happening. But What Got You Here Won't Get You There by Marshall Goldsmith. I don't know if anyone's read that book, but it was very interesting because sometimes talking to civilians, I don't realize how much we say the word leadership, right? If I had $1 for every time I say leader or leadership, I'd have an extra income. And when I talk to civilians sometimes, a lot of them seem to just be where they're at, right? Like they look at their job responsibilities, this is their job responsibilities. And even though I think humans across the board are leaders, they don't identify with needing to know a lot about leadership. And what Marshall Goldsmith talks about in this book was all of our biases and blind spots, and how to make the work center better. And just as a leader, are you doing these things? This is maybe what it looked like. So I really enjoyed listening to it. And I think that it's a good book to it's one of the things that I think you could revisit after not listening to it for a while, because it's always going to be applicable. So, Sergeant King.
Yes, my book, Indistractable. All right, and it's how to control your attention and to choose your life. So, one of the things that I got from this, so this book was recommended to me by Chief Master Sergeant Al Wells. So the biggest thing that I got from this book, still reading it too, is kind of being more deliberate with the way that you speak to people about your time, right? So the biggest example that I got, and then the example that I use, people come by, right? As leaders, need $1 for that. But as leaders, we talk, like when people come by, we always say like open door, and I always make time, and especially as CAAs, sheriffs, superintendents, if somebody comes to your door, even if you got a meeting or you got something to do in 5 minutes, if somebody's like, hey, Chief or Sergeant King or Sergeant Witter or Shirt, you got a second? Automatically, you're like, yes. You don't, but you say yes. Now, when they're speaking, you spend that time.
Am I the only one that sees Sergeant King is frozen? No?
He's definitely frozen.
Yeah, he's frozen in
We'll give him
time.
a couple of
I'll
seconds.
finish it for him. You spend that time.
There you go. It's like, what a cliffhanger.
Now I'm in suspense.
I was just like, man, he's really going to hit us with something, but then his face froze. So I'll see if he's going to text me. Man, come on, Sergeant King.
Somebody got a drum roll in the background there? What's going on?
I know he has the low triangle also, so he may just have lost reception. Oh.
All right, so I guess we want to have to put together what he was trying to say. We want to have to guess what he was trying to say. And I think what he's trying to say is, if they come to the office and you say yes, make time. If not, tell them you don't have time. I guess that's the only thing I can think of.
All right, we're going to end on that one because he's not joining us in a timely manner, and we're well over the time. But thank you again, all of you. I see some regulars, I see some new faces and some faces from other events that we've done. So tomorrow at noon, like I mentioned, we have our special delivery. It's going to be resiliency. We have 2 people talking about different situations that increased their resiliency, and they're both really, good stories. And it may be a good break from current events because, there's just a lot of stuff going on. But I appreciate all of you, and I hope to see you soon. Let Sergeant King and I know if you need anything. Talk to you soon.